Good morning, thank you, Raluca. So, health promotion sounds like an inherently good idea. Yet we can take a step back and ask, what actually constitutes health education in music? And what assumptions are driving health courses in music schools? And to address these questions, we can rely on a form of reasoning that is critical and analytical, that is philosophical in nature. And this kind of reasoning functions as an archaeological dig. So as in an archaeological dig, we can go beneath the visible layer of health education and interrogate its assumptions. So what do we see in the visible layer of health education? We see health courses with their content and scope. We see individuals who are responsible for the delivery of health content. We see music students and tertiary music institutions themselves, which are the sites of health education. And let's review these dimensions to understand current trends and underlying assumptions. So let's start with the content. In many tertiary music institutions, health education courses are designed to help students prevent injuries and manage stress. Typically, these involve a focus on two key areas, the body and the mind. The body is approached through techniques for physical control and injury prevention, and the mind through strategies to reduce stress and performance anxiety. Now, while this can be helpful, there are some important concerns that need to be analyzed. So the first concerns, by focusing on ways to manage physical and mental performance demands, health education may paradoxically serve the specialism of modern conservatories, where the culture of the virtuoso has pushed bodies and mind to the point of injury and strain. So within this context, health education risks becoming instrumentalized in service of virtuoso performances, perfecting bodies and minds to meet high-performance standards, potentially at the expense of long-term individual needs and sustainable artistry. And then the second concerns. Second, because students are expected to manage physical and mental performance demand to excel in competitive environments, health education has responded mainly with individual-level techniques to manage stress and prevent injury. But this focus on individualization, on individual coping, may lead to a sense of internalized responsibility and even self-blame, discouraging students from seeking help or speaking openly about their health. So this focus on individual coping risks contributing to persistent stigma surrounding both physical injury and mental health challenges. So in sum, it's important to consider the risks of instrumentalization and individualization in current approaches to health education. In light of these risks, we need to reflect and perhaps redefine the scope of health education. I will return to this point in the second part of the speech, and I continue now by asking, who teaches health courses? So some institutions rely on health professionals. Others rely on music faculty, who often have no formal health training. And these trends actually reflect an important epistemological divide about what is considered as legitimate knowledge in health education, and about what constitutes authority, and who is considered entitled to disseminate knowledge. Music faculty tend to rely on embodied and experiential knowledge, often acquired through years of teaching and lived practice within performance traditions. Their authority is based on their musical expertise. In contrast, health professionals are trained within scientific paradigms. Their authority draws on theoretical knowledge and is supported by clinical practice. But what we see here is not just a difference in expertise. We see a deeper clash of knowledge system. One prioritizes objectivity, the other artistic intuition. Because we don't have discussion about possible frameworks connecting these two approaches, health and artistry often remain in separate silos. when in fact they should be seen as deeply interconnected. And now let's turn to students. In many schools, students are expected to engage with health courses in a passive way. Only a few health courses actually incorporate active educational strategies that prompt students to reflect on their own health practices. But this is problematic for several reasons. Passive learning does not encourage students to examine their health behavior and performance. Passive learning does not support long-term behavioral change. Passive learning doesn't motivate students to challenge common beliefs that may lead to harmful choices, such as no pain, no gain. And passive learning may also push students to rely too heavily on their teachers when they have health concerns. And this learning approach is linked to the broader apprenticeship model that still dominates many music institutions. In this model, the teacher is the authority, and the student is expected to conform to established musical traditions. But unfortunately, this model aligns health education with artistic compliance, encouraging students to manage their health only in ways that support established musical traditions. Let's make an example. When students learn canonical repertoire, they may feel compelled to replicate every nuance as dictated by a tradition. And in this context, an uncritical engagement with health knowledge may lead students to view it as a tool for mastering traditional interpretations, rather than as a means to reflect on how artistic conformity impacts their health. And finally, let's talk about institutions. Many schools now advertise their commitment to student-centered well-being, and we see statements like this one. But this comes with two main contradictions. First, this statement like this shift the burden back to the students. In other words, tertiary institutions promote health offerings as important resources, but they expect students to take full responsibility for their own health. And health education still remains peripheral in the curriculum, and courses are usually offered as electives. So to understand these contradictions, we can think about the broader role of universities. Educational institutions aren't just a space for learning. There are places that shape how individuals understand themselves and their place in society. In market-driven Western economies, these institutions serve as a vehicle for efficiency, competitiveness, and profitability. And they aim to form competitive and self-centered economic actors who can become economically self-sufficient. But under this market-driven approach, university and music schools risk commodifying health education as a selling product rather than a transformative educational priority. So from this view, schools may engage with health discourses in the forms of pastoral care, presenting themselves as caring by strategically using health education to enhance their competitiveness among peer institutions. So pastoral care may thus function as a symbolic gesture that allows institutions to appear supportive without enacting long-term structural changes in their curricula. So to conclude this part of the talk, health education in tertiary music institutions is full of good intentions, but also contradictions. And as we move forward, we need to ask, what would it take to reimagine health education? And I will return later to these questions, and now turn to Nabil, who will address the underlying structural issues that tertiary music institutions must confront in order to enact meaningful change. Thank you.